Welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. Welcome to Thursday Fun Day with our oh-so-favorite shapeshifter, Morophon the Boundless. And in today's video, we are going to install the mana base of our WUBRG tribal deck. What's up, MTGBC? That is the MTG Burgeoning community. Here we are with a Thursday Fun Day video with our oh-so-favorite shapeshifter, Morophon the Boundless. And in today's video, we are going to complete our current deck building series by installing the mana base of our WUBRG tribal deck. If you missed any previous installments of this deck building series, you can click any of the links below and bring you right up to speed. So far, as a brief review, here are the cards that are already added, that have already been added to this WUBRG tribal deck. Chromanticore, Chromat, Garth One-Eye, Horde of Notions, Maelstrom Archangel, Niv Mizzet Reborn, Reaper King, Scion of the Ur-Dragon, Sliver Hivelord, Sliver Legion, Sliver Overlord, Sliver Queen, the First Sliver, Bringer of the Blue Dawn, Bringer of the Black Dawn, Bringer of the Red Dawn, Esika, God of the Tree, but make no mistake about it, she is in this deck because of the Prismatic Bridge. Genju of the Realm, Maelstrom Nexus, Last Stand, Bring to Light, Conflux, Najila the Blade Blossom, Sisay Weatherlight Captain, General Tazri, Legacy Weapon, Joda Archmage Eternal, Knight of New Alara, All Suns Dawn, Ramos Dragon Engine, Scion of Draco, Vampiric Tutor, Demonic Tutor, Lightning Greaves, Rhythm of the Wild, Garruk's Uprising, Arcane Adaptation, Maskwood Nexus, Eerie Ultimatum, Uncage the Menagerie, Assassin's Trophy, Damn, Anguished Unmaking, Bedevil, Utter End, Supreme Verdict, Time Wipe, and Merciless Eviction. This is the bulk, actually, this is every, well, not every spell. These are all of our creature spells, our disruption spells, our miscellaneous spells, and all that remains are the lands and our mana ramp spells. So let's get right to it and put the finishing touches on this awesome, flavorful WUBRG tribal deck. Let's start with some mana rampage. One copy of Farseek lets us search for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card and put that onto the battlefield tapped. More often than not, I can't imagine a scenario where it wouldn't be, we're going to be targeting a Triome, which we will see later when we install the lands into this deck tech. Farseek is spell 1, 3 visits, searches our library for a force card and puts it onto the battlefield. Now, if it's early enough in the game where we cannot have to worry about tapping that land for mana, again, this should target a Triome as a way in which to fix our mana, because WUBRG is more important in this deck than any other 5-color deck that we've had on this channel. To continue with the theme of Farseek and 3 visits, 1 copy of Nature's Lore, 1 in a green. We can search our library for a force card and put it onto the battlefield. That's pretty much just 3 visits 1.0, as this came before. Actually, what came first? Actually, 3 visits came first, then Nature's Lore. So Nature's Lore would be 3 visits 2.0. Again, most likely we want to target a Triome if we don't need the mana that turn. Next up, we're going to switch from sorcery to creature, but keep the same mana value by including 1 copy of Bloom Tender. We can tap her, and we can get we can add 1 mana to our mana pool of any color of colors among permanents we control. So with this being a dedicated WUBRG deck, we should be able to turn Bloom Tender sideways to produce WUBRG mana, which is just going to allow us to really pull out pull out ahead of our opponents and advance our board state to just an overwhelming amount of presence, and our opponents will just not be able to keep up. Next card, we're going to go same mana value, but now we're going to go to enchantment spell, and we're going to go Prismatic Omen. Lands we control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. So this fixes all of our lands by giving them a chromatic orrery-like effect. I'm sorry, chromatic lantern-like effect, or like a command tower effect. With Prismatic Omen in play, our mana will always be fixed. And plus, it's a bonus that it's in an enchantment. And let's be honest, enchantment is one of those card types that's a little more difficult to remove from the battlefield. All right, let's shift gears from some colored spells to our first artifact ramp spell, and that's going to be Arcane Signet. Of course, probably one of the best artifacts we could play in any deck, particularly one of a WUBRG variety. We turn this for 1 mana of any color. Can't go wrong with that with a mana value of 2. All right, next up we have Feyburrow Elder. So in some instances, this can be considered a Bloomtender 2.0. Feyburrow Elder comes with a little bigger of a body because it is going to get +1/+1 for each other color among permanents we control. So, I'm sorry, for each color among permanents we control. So just by itself, the Feyburrow Elder is going to be 2/2 with Vigilance. So we could send in some, early damage and still be able to tap the Elder for some mana. And again, similar to Bloomtender, Feyburrow Elder is going to give us 1 mana of any color among permanents we control. So we can turn Feyburrow Elder sideways and potentially get WUBRG out of that activation. We spoke about it earlier, so we might as well include it into the deck itself. The Chromatic Lantern is going to have a Prismatic Omen effect to all of our lands, and itself will tap for 1 mana of any color. Next artifact up is not necessarily giving us mana ramp, but it is going to allow us to, how should we say this? This will allow us to synergize with our commander in a great way, and that's going to be Fist of Suns. The majority of our spells in this deck already cost WUBRG. However, if we have this in play in addition to our commander, well, those spells are all going to be free. Very, very nice. WUBRG free casting costs. And this will also act as an artifact form for Jodah, Archmage Eternal. Fist of Suns is in. All right, 3 mana spells left. Next up, and a card that I think is seriously underplayed and undervalued. That's one of my favorite cards. I definitely was looking forward to including it in this deck. And that's the Prismatic Geoscope. Now, yeah, the mana value is 5, and it does ETB tapped. So that, those are a couple of drawbacks there. However, if we can get this in the game early enough, or put this onto the battlefield where we don't need to utilize it the turn it comes in, then we're just going to cakewalk around for the rest of the game all over the battlefield, because this has the domain mechanic, which will allow us to add X mana in any combination of colors to our mana pool, where X is the number of basic land types among lands we control. So just for the purposes of clarity and to act as a bit of a spoiler, we are going to play every single Triome and every single Shockland in addition to some basic lands. Plus, we have spells like Prismatic Omen that are also going to make all of our lands of a particular type. So in order, to trigger the full domain of X being 5 for Prismatic Geoscope, that should not be a problem at all. And once we have this online, well, that's just another permanent that we can turn and activate to get WUBRG. So that's Prismatic Geoscope, Feyburrow Elder, and the Bloomtender, 3 permanents that together could give us 15 total mana. Speaking of turning sideways to produce WUBRG mana, we have Jegantha, one of the oh-so-famed companions from Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths. For 4 and a Gruul, it's a 5/5. It's not acting as a companion, so we don't have to worry about its deck building restriction. All we have to do is tap Jegantha for WUBRG, and we can't use that mana to play any generic mana costs. Luckily for us, our deck is inundated with WUBRG spells, so Jegantha is the 4th permanent that we're putting into this deck that can turn sideways for 5 mana. And the last spell to be included, and the 5th permanent that allows us to tap to add WUBRG mana, is going to be a copy of Chromatic Orrery. This is an artifact with a mana value of 7, and it says we may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. So not necessarily the same effect as Prismatic Omen, and not necessarily the same effect as Chromatic Lantern. This just makes all of our mana any color we want it to be all of the time. Plus we can turn this sideways to add 5 colorless, which for the purposes of this deck and for the ability that's stamped on Chromatic Orrery, we can spend that as WUBRG. And as an additional bonus, we can tap 5, which is not going to be a problem for us in this deck. We can turn the Chromatic Orrery sideways and then draw a card for each color among permanents we control. In a dedicated WUBRG deck like this, we could tap 5, tap this, and draw 5 cards. Chromatic Orrery, our 5th permanent that can turn sideways to generate WUBRG mana just from this subset of spells. Amazing, amazing cards. And the WUBRG tribal deck is really shaping up, folks. So these are the spells. They're all right there. We've got 1 commander and we've got 60 total spells. So we're left with 39 lands. Let's fill in the land slots, and there's not going to be too many thrills, spills, or chills here. We're going to make sure that we maximize the amount of colored mana that we can utilize in this deck. So we have to put a premium on that, even though we pretty much have a very high concentration of mana fixing in this deck already. We don't ever want to be unwooberged in this deck, or else we could be in some serious problems. So with that in mind, moving forward, we will not be seeing any lands that are only going to give us colorless mana. That just cannot happen. So we've got 5 basics, 1 of each color. That's going to start off the lands. 5 basics, 1 of each color. A plains, an island, a swamp, a mountain, and a forest. And as aforementioned earlier during this deck check, we have all 5 triomes. They're going in there as well. Super fetchable with the 3 land types on each of the triomes, and they really should be the targets of your Farseeks, of your 3 visits, and your Nature's Lore. And also, as mentioned, we have the 5 basics, we have the 5 triomes. We are going to put all 10 shocks. All 10 shock lands are going in as a way in which to make sure that we can fix the mana as quickly and as readily as possible. And because right here represents 20 different fetchable lands with the 5 basics, the 5 triomes, and the 10 shocks, we are going to include all 10 fetch lands as a way in which to make sure that we're fixing the mana the best we can. So the 10 fetches are going in, and they are going to be targeting the 10 shocks, the 5 triomes, and then the 5 basics. And of course, if I'm going to put that in an order of importance, we're most likely looking to target the triomes first, and then also later target the shocks if needed, and the basics if we're running low on life, or if we need to use mana right away, or if someone just playing with some Field of Ruins. We don't want to lose out on getting a free basic land if somebody pops off a land during the game. All right, so those are 30 lands. We got 9 lands left, and we're only looking for lands that are going to help smooth out the mana even more than we already have. And that's going to start off with the best land in our format, 1 copy of Command Tower. Not much introduction needed there. It's the best land in our format. Let's see, Command Tower number 2, for the purposes of this deck, most likely will be a Reflecting Pool. It's going to give us 1 mana of any type that a land we control can produce. And let's face it, with the number of triomes that we have and the other number of 5-colored lands that are going to be included in this deck, Reflecting Pool really is just going to be Command Tower 2.0. Speaking of 1 mana of any color, we're going to include a copy of Mana Confluence. We will get 1 mana of any color. It's going to cost us a life, but that's going to be okay, because if we need to use it to tap out our mana, then we're going to do that every single time. And for the purposes of clarity, if we have a Prismatic Omen in play, or if we have a Chromatic Lantern in play, we can utilize the Mana Confluence without paying the 1 life. So that's an important distinction to make because of the overriding effect of the Prismatic Omen and or the overriding effect of the Chromatic Lantern. All right. 1 mana of any color, Forbidden Orchard. This is absolutely fine. We can gift our opponent, one of our opponents, a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. It doesn't even fly. So more than anything, we're just giving them a liability of being made fun of at the table for having a spirit that just can't fly. All right, next up we have Path of Ancestry. Now this comes into play tapped, which I am generally not a fan of, and I kind of steer away from lands that ETB tapped. However, for the purposes of trying to maximize our resources in this WUBRG tribal deck, I'm going to overlook the fact that this comes into play tapped. And when we can untap with it and cast it, it's going to be very beneficial because it does give us 1 mana of any color. Morophon is all 5 colors, so it's going to give us 1 of any of those colors. Additionally, if we use that mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we get the bonus of scrying 1. So if we're casting any of our creatures while using Path of Ancestry, we will always get to scry 1 because Morophon has Changeling, so it's all creature types at all times. Those benefits seem to outweigh the risk of this land coming into play tapped. So that's why we decided to include Path of Ancestry. And again, the next land coming in is going to potentially give us 1 of any color, and that's going to be Exotic Orchard. Now, of course, it's going to be very unlikely that you're going to sit down to a commander table and all of your opponents are playing nothing but colorless decks. So Exotic Orchard is going to help out with some of the colors, but it's definitely not one of the top 5 color producing lands that we've already talked about. Again, however, with the presence of Prismatic Omen or Chromatic Lantern, it definitely has, the overriding effect to change and become another command tower. All right, we're down to 3 lands here, the last 3 lands of this build, the last 3 cards of this WUBRG tribal deck. And next up, we are going to put in a copy of the World Tree. Similar to Path of Ancestry, the World Tree is also a land that enters the battlefield tapped. However, for the purposes of this deck and what this land can do, I think we can easily overlook the fact that it comes into play tapped. And that's just for the middle text alone before we even start talking about the last wall of text at the bottom of the card. As long as we control 6 or more lands we control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. So just with the World Tree in play, and at least 5 other lands, and this is Commander, we're going to have more than 5 lands. This acts as a Chromatic Lantern effect for every land that we control. So we can pick and choose what mana we need to cast our WUBRG spells. And lastly, that big ability down there at the bottom, double WUBRG. In a lot of decks, that could be an intimidating number. That could be an intimidating amount of mana to generate 2 of every color. As you can see here with the spells we've reviewed in this video, double WUBRG we can get by tapping 2 of our permanents. Okay, we can tap our Bloom Tender and then we can tap our Fabro Elder, and we're generating double WUBRG. So we could do that, and then we can tap and sacrifice the World Tree, and we can search our library for any number of God cards, put them onto the battlefield, and then shuffle our library. Now, at this moment, there are no quote-unquote God cards in the deck. However, if we flash back to the quick review of the spells already included in this deck, you'll notice that there was an Arcane adaptation and a Maskwood Nexus. The Maskwood Nexus would trigger to make all of our creatures all creature types. So the World Tree would be active and pull out every single creature out of our deck right in the play with the Maskwood Nexus on the battlefield and under our control. If we have the Arcane adaptation, we can cast that, naming gods, and then we can activate the World Tree and fish out all of those cards from our library and put them right into play. So the World Tree we can consider to be a massive mana fixer in addition to one heck of a win condition. All right, we have 2 more lands left, and the next one, it does generate colorless mana, but it's also there to help us getting our WUBRG mana, and that's going to be a copy of Crystal Quarry. Taps for a colorless mana, but we can tap 5 and tap this land to give us WUBRG. Again, we are really shooting the moon here and making sure that we can fix our WUBRG colors, because without that, this deck is going to be very difficult to get off the ground. Crystal Quarry is going to be one of those lands that will help us do that, and that's how we can justify its presence in the 99, even though it can tap for a colorless mana. And this is it, folks. This is land number 39, card number 100 of this WUBRG tribal deck, and it's going to be Cascading Cataracts. This is an indestructible version of Crystal Quarry in some ways. It can tap for a colorless, and we can tap 5 and tap the Cascading Cataracts to add 5 mana in any combination of colors to our mana pool. More likely than not, we're going to be utilizing this land to give us our WUBRG colors, because let's face it, most of the spells in this deck need WUBRG in order to cast them or to utilize their effects or abilities. So Cascading Cataracts and Crystal Quarry, although they do both provide colorless mana outside of the fixing of World Tree or Prismatic Omen or Chromatic Lantern, it does have the ability to pump 5 mana into it to turn sideways to give us the WUBRG that we need to cast our spells. And there you have it, MTG BC. That is Morophon the Boundless in a WUBRG tribal deck. I look forward to hearing your comments about this deck in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.